Hello there. Welcome back, or welcome for the very first time, to Sleepy Informer. I'm so glad you've decided to spend some of your evening with me. This is episode 1 of our long, slow, unhurried journey through Elden Ring, and if this is your first time here, the idea is very simple. I'm going to play the game quietly, and I'm going to talk about it in a soft, meandering way, and you're going to let yourself drift off to sleep. That's it. That's the whole thing. There's no need to keep up, no need to remember anything, no need to worry about missing a moment. If you fall asleep in the first 10 minutes, that's a win. That's the whole idea. And if you're still with me at the end of the 100 minutes, well, that's fine too. Either way, I'm just glad you're here. Tonight, we're going into Stormveil Castle. If you know the game, you'll know what that means. It's the first great castle, the first proper legacy dungeon, sitting up there on the cliffs of Limgrave, home to Godrick the Grafted. If you don't know the game at all, don't worry. I'll walk you through it very gently, and you don't need to know a single thing about any of it to enjoy it. It's just a big, damp, wind-blown castle full of little corners to explore, and we're going to poke through it thoroughly, without any rush at all. We might pick up a smithing stone here, a golden rune there, a talisman if we're lucky, and we'll take our time doing it. Before we get going, I'd like you to get comfortable, whatever that means for you. Adjust your pillow. Pull the duvet up to your chin. If your legs are cold, tuck them in. If you're too warm, kick a foot out from under the covers. I always do that. It's one of the great small pleasures of the world, isn't it? 1 foot out and 1 foot in. Put your phone face down. Dim the light if it's too bright. Close your eyes if they'll close for you. And if they won't, that's all right too. You don't have to force it. Just let yourself settle. Now, a couple of things before we begin, just so you know what to expect. This is a no commentary walkthrough at heart, so what you're seeing on the screen is calm. There's no shouting, no cutting between things, no jump scares, no big loud reveals. It's just a quiet play, and I'm here to narrate along softly. If something dangerous happens in the game, because occasionally things do, I'll talk about it gently. I'm not going to raise my voice at any point tonight, I promise. No matter what happens, we'll take it slowly. And if there's a boss to fight, well, we'll fight it. But we'll do it at our own pace. There's no rush. Nothing bad is going to happen to you tonight. One more little thing before we start. If you're the kind of person who likes to have a routine before you sleep, a bit of stretching, a sip of water, a moment to think about the day, this would be a good moment to do it. I'll wait. I don't mind. The game isn't going anywhere. It'll still be here when you're ready. There's no rush at all. All right, I think we're ready. Let's tuck you in, and let's get down to sleep with Elden Ring. And here we go. So, we're going to begin at the Site of Grace just outside the front gate of Stormveil Castle. If you don't know what a Site of Grace is, don't worry. It's just a resting spot. A little golden light, sort of glimmering in the grass, or on the stone, wherever you happen to find one. When you sit at it, the world sort of stops and lets you catch your breath. You can level up if you've got the runes for it, or top up your flasks, or fast travel somewhere else if you like. Tonight, we're going to use them as our anchor points, and there'll be a few of them scattered around the castle for us to find. The one we're starting at is called the Stormveil Main Gate Site of Grace, which is a very literal name, because it's right there at the main gate. In front of us, the great wooden doors of the castle closed. To our left, the ravine, a long, narrow, foggy drop of a path that curls around the side of the castle, and standing between us and the gate, a shifty-looking fellow called Gostoc. He's a gatekeeper, sort of. He's the man who's meant to be manning the door, but he's got a bit of a shifty, uncertain air about him. He offers us a choice. He can open the front gate for us, which will let us go in the proper way, straight up the middle, but there'll be a lot of soldiers on the other side, and probably 1 or 2 very large birds. Or, he says, there's a side path, the ravine, that no one's watching, and we can sneak in that way. He's quite happy to send us round the side. He says the front gate is more honourable, but the side is safer. I get the impression he wouldn't much fancy going in the front gate himself, that's for sure. I think tonight we'll go round the side. It's quieter, it lets us catch a few little bits of loot we wouldn't get otherwise, and it feels sort of appropriate for a slow evening. No need to kick down the front door when there's a nice, quiet, mossy path around the side that no one's watching. Before we set off though, let me just take a moment to look at Torrent. Torrent is our little spectral steed, a ghost horse essentially. Well, a ram goat horse if I'm being honest. He's got these funny little horns and cloven hooves, and he's sort of a blue-grey colour, and he can leap enormously high, and he doesn't tire, and he doesn't complain, and he'll be with us for pretty much the whole game. He's a lovely creature, really. We can't take him inside Stormveil, unfortunately. The sight of Grace inside marks a threshold where he politely stays behind, and we have to go in on foot. But he'll be here waiting for us when we come back out. I always think of him a little bit like a dog you leave in the car with the window cracked. He's absolutely fine, but you keep thinking about him. Right, let's get moving. I'll just take a slow look around before we go. It's a grey sort of day here in Limgrave. It always is, mind you. I don't think I've ever seen full sunshine in the lands between, but it's especially misty here at the base of Stormveil. There's a soft howl of wind through the cliffs, and the grass is bending gently, and there's the sound of a wind chime. No, that's not a wind chime. That's the game's music, this very light, tinkling, sad little piano that plays around the Graces. It's one of my favourite pieces of music in the whole game, and there's really no rush to leave the Grace when it's playing, is there? Speaking of soft sounds, before we get properly into it, how are you doing over there? The weather here where I am is a bit grey too, actually. It's one of those in-between evenings where it isn't quite raining, but the air feels like it's thinking about it. I've got the window open just a crack, and every so often you can hear a car go past, and once I heard a dog bark from what must have been 3 streets over. Little things. It's a nice time to be sitting quietly. I hope wherever you are it's peaceful too. All right, off we go then. We'll bear left off the main path and slip down the side of the cliff. The path narrows almost immediately. It's really more of a ledge than a proper path, just a long, curving strip of stone with a bit of grass growing on it, wedged between the castle wall on one side and a long fall on the other. I try not to look at the drop, if I'm honest. Not that Torrent's coming with us here. He can't fit. But even on foot it's a little bit vertiginous. If you don't like heights, you can just imagine it as a nice woodland path. It's very similar, really. The bird song of Limgrave still floats down from above, and there's a soft mist that curls up from the ravine below, and it all looks quite pretty in a wet, cool sort of way. Now, a little bit further along the ledge, there's a small alcove built into the wall. I don't know what it was for originally, some sort of shrine maybe, or a shelter for a lookout, and there's a lantern hanging in it, still lit. Someone put oil in that lantern once and lit it, and then nobody blew it out, and here it is still burning, quietly, all these years later. There's something a bit lovely about that. It's a very small, warm point of light in a very large, cold castle. I don't know why I always notice it. It's a completely inconsequential detail, but it's there. Almost immediately after the alcove, we come across a little collection of glowing pebbles. These are called rainbow stones. They're a bit of an odd item. You can throw them, and they leave a little coloured mark on the ground where they land, so you can drop breadcrumbs for yourself if you're worried about getting lost in a difficult area. I never really use them for that. Mostly I just pick them up and forget about them, and then months later I'll look in my inventory and think, oh, I've got 58 rainbow stones, what am I meant to do with these? But you're supposed to pick them up, and I always do. So we'll grab these ones and drop them in the bag. There's a small stack of them here. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Nice and easy. Just up ahead there's a bit of a scaffolding structure. The castle wall has these wooden platforms built out over the ravine, presumably for maintenance work back when the castle was still a going concern. We can climb up onto one of them and have a look around. Not much up there tonight. A corpse with a little gleam on it, which is usually a sign of a rune item. Yes, a golden rune. That'll be worth a bit when we sit down at a grace and cash it in. Nothing dramatic, just a small extra bit of currency. We'll pop it in the bag. Now up above us on this next scaffold there's a fellow, a soldier of Godrick they call these ones, just one of the standard soldiers of the castle. He hasn't seen us, and I don't fancy fighting him up on a wooden platform where a wrong step sends me over the edge, so we're going to leave him well enough alone. That's actually one of the nice things about the sneaky path. You can just tiptoe around most of the people, and no one's really expecting company from this direction. He's sort of pacing around up there, doing his job, and we'll let him get on with it. Actually, before we go, there's a little side path here that goes down a bit further. Just a short detour. Sometimes there's a smithing stone tucked away on these little offshoot bits. Yes, here we are. A smithing stone one, sitting on a corpse. Smithing stones are what we use to upgrade our weapons. There are 9 tiers of them, from 1 up to 9, and then a rarer ancient dragon smithing stone at the very top of the tree. We're right at the beginning tonight, so we're picking up tier 1s, which will let us upgrade an early weapon a few levels. Nothing exciting. But every little helps, doesn't it? Now, this next bit is a bit steep. There's a wooden ladder, and we'll go down it. Slowly does it. There's really no rush. I always find myself going down ladders very slowly in this game, more slowly than I actually need to, because you can't roll while you're on a ladder, and if something attacks you at the bottom, you're a bit stuck. So there's no harm in taking your time, is there? Down we go, 1 rung at a time. Perfect. At the bottom of the ladder, we're on a mossy stone platform, and there's another one of those big scaffolded pathways running along the cliff. This is really quite a nice bit of level design. It feels like a place people used to work, and now nobody does, and it's just gone quiet. There's water dripping somewhere, and the wind is a little louder down here in the ravine, and everything smells faintly of damp stone. Well, obviously it doesn't smell of anything. We're not really here, but you can imagine it. I think I might make myself a cup of tea, actually. Not right this second, I've got a game to play, but soon. There's something about grey, misty weather that makes me want tea more than anything else. I'm a bit of a fusspot about how I make it. I always warm the pot first, and I always leave the bag in for at least 4 minutes, and I always add the milk after, not before. My grandmother would put the milk in first, but I could never get on with that. I think you can taste it, actually. The order matters. But then, some people don't care about tea at all, and that's their business. I hope you have something warm nearby, if you like that sort of thing. A hot water bottle, or a mug of something. It makes the whole business of falling asleep a lot easier. Anyway, where were we? Along the scaffolded pathway. There's a slight breeze coming up the ravine now, and my character's cloak is fluttering ever so slightly in it. I quite like that little detail. From Software are very good at that sort of thing. The cloth simulation, the way capes and cloaks and long hair move about. It sounds like a small thing, but it makes the world feel much more alive when you're just standing still and watching your character breathe. There's another corpse a bit further on, up on the beam above us. I can just about see the glow. If I jump onto this crate and up onto the beam, carefully, mind, yes, let me have a look. Oh, another rune, a slightly bigger one this time. That's fine, in the bag. And back down. Very good. You know what I think it is, actually, why this part of the game feels so calming to explore? It's the pace of the whole thing. Even though it's a very difficult game, and the fights can be really intense, the moments in between are so slow. You spend more time walking and looking around than you do actually fighting. Your character walks at a proper walking pace, not a sprint, and the levels are big enough that you have to wander through them, and you notice things. You notice the way the light comes through the wooden beams. You notice the way the moss grows on the north side of the wall. You notice a little wildflower growing up between 2 paving stones. If you're rushing, you miss all of it. But if you slow down, it's really quite peaceful. It's the same reason people like walking simulators, I think. There's a whole world here, and someone put a lot of care into every corner of it. And if you take your time, you can appreciate all of that. All right, up we go. There's a bit of a walk along the ravine path, and eventually it turns back inward toward the castle, and there's a small door in the wall. Very unassuming little door. I sometimes wonder who put it there. It's clearly meant to be a servant's entrance, or a maintenance door, and someone left it unlocked once, and now it's just how you get in if you don't feel like using the front. That's the sort of detail that makes this castle feel very lived in. It's not just a video game set piece. It feels like a real place where people used to work and get on with things, and now those people are mostly gone, and the doors are still there. We push it open, and we're inside. A small stone corridor, cool and quiet. And immediately, off to the left, there's another corpse with something on it. Yes, a smithing stone, again. Very generous, this bit. In you go. And a little further on, there's a soldier, sitting on a barrel, half asleep. Poor lad. I think let's slip past him. Or actually, if I'm being fair to him, we can just quietly deal with it, because he'll be trouble on the way back if we don't. There we go. He barely even noticed. Not a fair fight, really, but this is the way of things in the lands between, isn't it? Onward. We come out into a slightly larger area now, a bit of a stone walkway, with the courtyard opening up in front of us. And oh, there's one of the stormhawks up there. Have you ever seen one of these? They're not what you'd call small. They're really quite alarmingly large birds, sort of hunched on top of the wall, with these enormous wings. And every so often they let out this great cawing sound that echoes around the castle. I always think they must have been perfectly ordinary birds once, and then someone in Godrick's court did something to them, because Godrick is the sort of chap who grafts extra bits onto things. That's his whole business. He grafts. He's Godrick the Grafted. He collects hands and limbs and arms and grafts them onto himself, and I think he's done the same with these birds. They just look a bit too much, if you know what I mean. But they don't tend to fly at us as long as we don't make a fuss, so we'll go softly, softly. There's another corpse just down here, on this little side platform, with something worth having. Yes, the Stormhawk axe. That's a nice little pickup. It's a battle axe with a weapon skill on it, and it's got a lovely windy sort of theme to match the whole castle. I don't think we'll use it right away, but it's a nice thing to have in the collection. And if we're doing this properly and picking up everything we can find, then in the bag it goes. I love the idea of a hawk-themed weapon, actually. I love it when games do that, when they give you a weapon that looks like it belongs to the place it was found. It's a very small piece of storytelling, but it makes the world feel much more connected. This axe wasn't just placed here for us to find. It belonged to someone who worked in this castle, who lived here, who fought for Godrick, and now that person is gone and their weapon is here on the ground and we can pick it up and take it with us. There's a whole life implied by a single item. I don't know why that appeals to me so much, but it does. Now, did you know I have a plant on my windowsill? It's a small one, nothing dramatic, a little pothos, one of those trailing ones with the heart-shaped leaves. I don't remember when I got it, but it's been with me for years now, and it's twice the size it was when I first brought it home. It has this one long tendril that keeps growing down over the edge of the pot and toward the floor, and every so often I have to gently loop it back up onto the shelf so it doesn't get in the way of the curtain. It's a very forgiving plant. If I forget to water it for a week, it doesn't hold a grudge. It just droops a bit and then perks back up when I remember. I sometimes think it's more patient than I am. All right, back to the castle. Where were we? Yes, the courtyard's just up ahead. Let me have a careful look before we go in. There's a soldier standing by the doorway. There's another one a bit further off, doing something with a barrel. And in the middle of the courtyard, that big stormhawk. No, actually 2 of them tonight. 2 birds. That's fine. We're not going to engage. We're going to sort of edge around the side of the courtyard, sticking to the walls, and see if we can slip past. Sometimes the birds spot you and sometimes they don't. It's a bit of a gamble, but we'll try. There, look, we've made it around the edge without either of them noticing. Very good. And now we can… there's a little door here on the right that leads inside. Let's not go in yet. Let's have a proper look around the courtyard first. There's still more to pick up out here. Speaking of birds, I keep a little feeder up in my back garden. Just one of those cheap plastic ones you can buy from a hardware shop. And I have a running list in my head of the birds that come to it. Blue tits, mostly. A few great tits. A pair of robins, who I think are actually a nesting pair because they always come together. A magpie who bullies everyone else off and takes the whole feeder for himself. And a wood pigeon, once, who was too big to actually land on the feeder and just sort of stared at it from the fence looking sad. I always feel very fond of the wood pigeon. He wanted the seeds so much and there was no way for him to get them. Life is a bit like that sometimes, isn't it? Anyway, not that any of the birds in Stormveil bear much resemblance to the ones in my garden. The stormhawks would swallow my little blue tits whole and probably ask for seconds. But I was reminded, just then, watching one of them shuffle around on the wall. Birds are birds. So, this courtyard. It's a bit of a triangle-shaped space, with the castle wall on one side, some old stables on another, and the fortifications running along the third. In the middle, there's a little tree. That's what we're heading for. In this game, whenever you see a young golden sapling, sort of glowing faintly, with a small pale figure buried beneath it, that's a golden seed. You pick one of those up, and it upgrades your flasks. You get an extra charge of healing, or an extra charge of your blue flask, depending on how you set it up. They're absolutely essential collectibles, and you find them dotted all over the world, usually at the base of these little Erdtree saplings, which are meant to be the offspring of the great big Erdtree in the middle of the map. It's the loveliest little detail, actually. A tiny miniature version of the huge cosmic tree, tucked into the corner of a courtyard. You could easily miss it if you weren't looking. We'll walk over to it, very slowly. If the stormhawks look up, we stop and pretend to be a bit of scenery. All right. And there we go, a golden seed. In it goes. That's our flask upgraded. Well, it'll be. Next time we sit at a grace and remember to talk to Melina about it. Melina's the young woman who gave us Torrent, and she's the one who takes the seeds off us and does the flask upgrading. She's a rather mysterious sort. I don't want to say too much about her because a lot of who she is unfolds through the story, but she's kind, in her way, and she means well, and we'll be seeing quite a bit of her as we go. Right, near the base of this same tree, there's a corpse curled up on the roots. And on the corpse, if I remember correctly, yes, the Hookclaws. That's a lovely little pickup. They're a pair of claws, one for each hand, with a nice quick attack and a natural bleed effect on them. Some people build entire characters around these things. Not us, tonight. We're just picking them up. Into the bag they go. We can always take them out and look at them properly later when we're back at the round table hold. Do you ever do that thing when you're going to sleep of remembering something small and pleasant from earlier in the day? I do that. I sort of scroll back through the day and try to land on something that made me smile, and I hold on to it for a bit while I'm waiting to drop off. Today I was walking past a bakery. I don't go into it very often, but the smell always catches me. And there was a very small child pressed up against the window looking at the buns. That was it. That was the moment. Just this little person, absolutely captivated by the buns. It's not a story, it's not a big thing, it's just a small, warm image, and I'll probably still be holding on to it when I turn the light off tonight. I hope you've got something small like that to hold on to as well. Speaking of bakeries, I've been trying to make bread at home lately. Sourdough, which is the sort of thing everyone tried to make a few years ago, and then most of them gave up. I gave up too, actually, for a while, and then I started again last winter. And I've got my starter in the fridge, and it lives in an old jam jar, and I feed it once a week with a bit of flour and water, and I've named it Colin. Colin the sourdough. He gets quite bubbly if I catch him at a good moment. My loaves are, well, they're inconsistent. Sometimes they come out beautifully, all crackly on top with big holes inside, and sometimes they come out sort of flat and dense, more like a doorstop than a bread. I don't know what makes the difference. It might be the weather, it might be Colin's mood, but I keep trying. There's something very soothing about kneading dough, isn't there? You get your hands in it and you push it around, and after a few minutes the whole thing has gone from a sticky mess to a nice smooth soft ball, and you can put it in a bowl and cover it with a tea towel and forget about it for a few hours. Very satisfying. Anyway, where are we? Yes, the courtyard. Let me just have another quick look around before we head inside. There's a chest in one of the wagons over here. Sometimes those chests have something in them. Sometimes they're empty. And this one, oh, it's just a bit of tinder wood, nothing much. Fine, in it goes. And down here, on the ground, another rainbow stone. Onto the pile with all the others. Now, one more thing before we head in. There's a soldier sitting up on a small platform over there, and if we let him spot us, he'll start firing arrows. Best if we just slip along the wall past the last of the wagons, like so, and duck through the doorway on the far side. In we go. And that puts us inside the castle proper. Let me just breathe for a second. It's darker in here and cooler, and the sound changes. Outside we had wind and birdsong, and now we've got that low, echoing quality that big stone buildings have. There's a torch burning somewhere further in, and the music of the castle is very faint and mournful, like a choir humming in another room. Beautiful, really. If you were designing a place that was supposed to feel a bit haunted and old and lived in and abandoned all at once, you'd do a lot worse than Stormveil. Up ahead, there's a stairway going up, and we'll take it. There's a soldier at the top who I think we're going to have to say hello to. He's got his back to us, so with a bit of luck we can catch him with a backstab and he won't feel a thing. Backstabs in this game are always a little bit theatrical. You sort of run up behind someone, and if you catch them just right, your character does a little animation of stabbing them very precisely, and it does a lot of damage. It's the most polite way of dealing with an enemy, in my opinion, because you're not really having a fight. It's more of a, well, we won't dwell on it. There. Done. Poor lad. He never even turned round. Onward. At the top of the stairs, we come out onto a rampart, one of the wooden walkways that runs along the top of the castle wall. It's a lovely bit of level design. On one side, we look down into the courtyard we just crossed. On the other, we look out over the cliffs of Limgrave. On a clear day, well, not that we get clear days, you can see all the way down to the Weeping Peninsula. Even now, with the mist, you can see the great mossy stones of the Stormfront and the towers of a distant chapel, and out past those, the sea. It's proper vista country, this bit. We'll walk along the rampart for a moment. There's a corpse ahead with a smithing stone on it. Another one. That's, I don't know, 4 or 5 smithing stones today, isn't it? That's a very respectable haul. And here, a chest tucked into the corner of one of the guard towers. Let's have a look. Oh, very nice. This one has the Erdtree's Favour talisman in it. That's a lovely find. Erdtree's Favour is one of those talismans that gives you a boost to your HP and your stamina and your equip load all at once. It's a good all-rounder. A lot of players wear it for practically the whole game. Very generous chest. Into the bag with that. You know, I was thinking earlier about a blanket I used to have as a child. It was one of those knitted things. You know the sort of pale blue and white, with a slightly ragged edge where the wool had come loose over the years. My grandmother made it. It wasn't a particularly fancy blanket. It was quite scratchy, if I'm being honest. But when I was small, I used to drag it around with me everywhere, and it got so worn that eventually the pattern was almost gone, and my mother tried, once, to throw it out, and I made such a fuss about it that she brought it back and put it in a drawer. I still have it, actually, in a box in the attic. I don't get it out often. I'm not going to sleep with a childhood blanket at my age. but I like knowing it's there. Some things you just don't throw away, even when they've stopped being useful. Anyway, the wind's picking up along the top of this wall, actually. You can hear it, that low, mournful whistling coming through the gaps in the parapet. It's the sort of sound you'd hear in a lighthouse or on a headland by the sea. Just a constant, soft whoosh. If you closed your eyes and just listened to the ambient sound of Stormveil for 10 minutes, you'd probably fall asleep. It's a lovely mix of wind and distant crows and the very faint sound of a torch crackling somewhere over your shoulder. Someone put a lot of thought into it. Along the rampart, we come to another door, and through it, a spiral staircase. Down we go. This is going to bring us into the lower part of the castle, the servants' quarters, some of the storage areas, and the beginnings of the dungeon. Nice damp stonework, this bit. You can practically feel the moss under your palm as you walk along the wall. At the bottom of the stairs, there's a small storeroom, and off it, a passage lined with barrels. And I can hear, yes, a bit of squeaking. Rats, big ones. In Stormveil, the rats are a bit, well, they're not quite domestic-sized. They're dog-sized, if we're honest. But they're rats. They just want to be left alone, mostly, and if we're quick and quiet, we can slip through this passage without any trouble at all. And if one of them notices us and comes over for a nibble, well, one swing of the sword usually sorts it out. I'll say this now, and I'll probably say it again as we go. You're welcome to close your eyes at any point. If you're still following along in your head, that's grand. If you've drifted off, that's grand too. I'm going to keep talking softly whether you're awake or not. That's just how this works. So don't feel that you have to keep concentrating. Let it wash over you. You don't need to remember a single thing. Through the passage, past the rats, very good. We come to a heavy iron gate, and behind this gate there's a cell, and in the cell there's a Grafted Scion. Now, this is a slightly tricky thing to explain gently, so let me just say what it is. It's a creature that's been sort of stitched together out of many arms. It's the same kind of creature you meet in the very opening cinematic of the game, actually. The one that made a lot of people put their controller down and go, well, what have I got myself into here? It's got these long, spindly limbs with axes and swords held in various hands, and it moves in a slightly unsettling way. But, and this is important, it's a fixed encounter. It's not roaming around the castle looking for us. It's locked in a cell. And we can either walk past and leave it be, or we can open the gate and have a fight with it. If we beat it, it drops something quite nice, the Axe of Godrick, which is a scaled-down version of the great big axe Godrick himself uses at the end of the level. And since we're doing this properly, and picking up everything worth picking up, I think we'll have a go. Let me just, before we open the gate, I'll just top up my flasks at the grace we passed a moment ago, and then come back. There, all set. Right. Grace hopping is quite a nice mechanic, actually. You can flit back and forth between graces just by pulling up the map, and it doesn't cost anything, and you can just do it whenever you fancy topping up. Very convenient. All right, we're back. Let me push open the gate. There we are, and here he comes. Now, I said we'd take these things slowly, and I meant it. We're not in any hurry. He's got a couple of long-reaching swings, and if he catches us with one of them it'll hurt, so we'll roll away from those. He's also got a leap, where he sort of throws himself across the room at us. We'll roll away from that too. And in between the big attacks we'll get in a hit or two, and we'll gradually whittle him down. That's the shape of it. There's no need to be brave, and there's no need to be fast. We'll just chip away at him. There we go, a hit. And another. And a roll, and another hit, and a roll. See? Nothing too dramatic. And now he's opening up the second half of his health, and a roll, and a hit, and one more, and down he goes. Very calm, very neat. Well done, us. And on the ground he's dropped a little glowing item, and that's the Axe of Godrick. Lovely. Into the collection. Now, before we move on, let's just sit for a moment. I don't know if you noticed, but I think I want to take a proper pause here. There's a little bit of stone nearby that would do very nicely as a bench, and there's a beam of that soft golden dungeon light coming down through the ceiling, and it's a lovely place to stop. Sometimes in this game, when I'm doing a long session, I like to just plant my feet and take in the view, whether or not there's a proper view to take in. It's my own version of a coffee break, I suppose. I'll just watch my character stand still for a bit and I'll listen to the ambient sound. There's a very quiet dripping somewhere, and a very quiet distant flute. That's just the background music of Stormveil, which is quite spare and mournful. It's one of my favorite soundtracks in the whole game, actually. Not much of a melody, just a few sparse notes, and long silences between them. It suits the castle. There, that's enough of a pause, I think. Let's carry on. There's still a lot to see. Actually, one more moment. Sorry, I want to point out how nice it is to be able to just stop in a game like this whenever you feel like it. You don't have to. There's no reward for it. The game isn't tracking how long you took, and it isn't going to give you a bonus for going slowly, but you can. Nobody's making you go fast. There's a lot of talk online about people speedrunning this game, beating it in ridiculous times, like an hour and a half, or less than that. And that's a whole art form of its own, and I respect it enormously. But it's not what I like doing. I like coming into a room like this one, and just standing in it. Looking at the way the stone has been carved, looking at the way the little bit of grass has grown up between the flagstones by the door, just letting the room be a room. There's no rush. Alright, now let's carry on. Out of the cell and back through the corridor. There's a stairway going up now, and up we go. This brings us into a slightly grander part of the castle. The servants have thinned out, and we're getting into the sort of hallways that would have been used by whoever ran the place, back before Godrick made a mess of everything. There are torches burning at regular intervals, and the flagstones are cleaner, and the whole feel is, well, it's still a Souls dungeon, but it's a slightly nicer one. Along the corridor here, there's a small library, and in it a corpse holding, let me have a look, a couple of smithing stones and a golden rune of the second tier. Very generous. In they go, and out of the library we come to a balcony overlooking a lower hall. The balcony has something on it, actually, right at the end there, on a corpse. Yes, the raw medallion. That's a nice one. It's a talisman that boosts your roars. You know how sometimes in the game your character can let out a great war shout, and it does a bit of damage in an area around you. The raw medallion makes those shouts stronger. Very niche. I don't often use it, but it's absolutely one of those things you pick up because you never know when you might want it. In the bag. And from this balcony we can jump down, carefully, on that little bit of scaffolding, there, and drop down into the lower hall. Well done us. Nice soft landing. There's a particular pleasure, I think, in a well-designed drop-down in one of these games. Someone spent real time working out exactly how far you could jump, and exactly where the ledge should be, and exactly what angle you should be able to fall from without taking any damage. And when you get it right, when you land softly and just carry on with your day, it feels satisfying in a very small, quiet way. Level design is a bit of an unsung art. You don't notice it when it's working, because it just feels natural. But when it's bad, when you can't quite work out where you're supposed to be going, or the jumps don't quite line up, you notice it immediately. This castle is very well designed. Everything joins up. Everything makes sense once you've seen it once. I think that's a real craft. Now, from this hall, there are a few doorways. One leads back the way we came, which we don't need. One leads out to a courtyard we haven't seen yet, which we do need. And one leads up quite a long way, actually, toward the throne room, where Godrick himself is waiting. We'll leave the throne room for last, obviously, because that's the big set piece of the whole level. But before we get there, we should mop up a couple more little bits of loot. Have you got a clock somewhere in your house that ticks? I do. Well, I've got two, actually. one in the kitchen and one in the hall. The one in the kitchen is a small round wooden one that my aunt gave me years ago, and it's got a very sort of hollow low tick, quite quiet, but you can hear it if the fridge is off. And the one in the hall is a much bigger old wall clock that used to belong to my grandfather, and it's got a much louder tock. Not so much a tick as a clunk, if I'm honest. It's not particularly good at keeping time. I have to reset it every couple of weeks or it starts running slow. But I love the sound of it. When the house is very quiet at night and I've turned everything off and I'm brushing my teeth, I can hear it from the hall, going tock, 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 tock. It's the sound of everything being all right. That's how I think of it. Everything's all right. I think most people, if they've got an old clock in the house, get a bit attached to it. There's something about a mechanical thing that keeps going all on its own, day and night, whether you're in the room or not. My grandfather's clock has been ticking away for something like 80 years now, and it was ticking away while he was alive, and it's still ticking away now that he isn't, and it'll probably still be ticking away when I'm not around either. It's a very patient object. Anyway, that's enough clock talk for one evening. Right, back to it. Through the doorway into the new courtyard. This one's smaller, and it's got a big tree in the middle again. Not one of the little golden saplings this time, just a regular tree. But the light through the leaves is very pretty. There's a banished knight in the middle of the courtyard, and he's got a great big flail. Now, the banished knights are one of the toughest sort of regular enemies in the game. They hit hard and they don't get staggered easily. But, and this is the trick, they're not paying much attention. If we sneak up behind him, very quietly, along the wall, we can catch him with a backstab. That'll take a big chunk of his health off in one go, and then we can finish him with a couple of quick swings. Ready? All right, there we go. Backstab. And 1, 2, very good. He's down. Well done us. And on the corpse just past him, a few more smithing stones, and an ash of war called Impaling Thrust. Ashes of war are, you know what, I'll explain them properly in a later episode. For now, all you need to know is that they're weapon skills you can attach to your weapons, very handy, into the bag. I went for a walk in the woods a few weekends ago, actually. Not that this has anything to do with anything, but I've been sort of thinking about it while we've been going through the courtyard. There's a little bit of woodland about 20 minutes walk from where I live, and I don't get down there as often as I should, but every so often I make the effort. And this particular Saturday, it was one of those very still autumn mornings, where the leaves had just started to turn but hadn't dropped yet, and the whole wood was sort of glowing yellow-orange, and the ground was that soft, damp leaf mold that you sink into just slightly with each step. And I saw 2 chestnut mushrooms. Well, I think they were chestnut mushrooms. I'm not confident enough about mushroom identification to actually eat one, so I just left them there. And a squirrel doing something very dramatic in a hedge, and a lot of nothing, which is really the point of going for a walk in the woods, isn't it? To have a lot of nothing happen for an hour or 2. I do think everyone should try and do that at least once a month. Anyway, where were we? Yes. Off the courtyard there's a bridge, quite a narrow one, running across a gap in the castle over a very long drop. On the other side of the bridge, another door, and past that door we're going to start seeing signs that we're getting close to the boss. There'll be a site of grace to top up at, and there'll be a spot where a certain young woman is going to offer to help us in the fight. Let's cross the bridge. Slowly does it. I'm always a bit cautious on these narrow bits because if my character's off to the side and I roll the wrong way, over we go. And there's no coming back from a fall in a Souls game. Well, there is. You respawn at the last grace. But it's an embarrassment nobody needs, is it? All right, we're across. Through the door, up a short staircase, and yes, there's the grace. The lift side chamber grace, I think this one's called. Or possibly the secluded cell. I always mix them up. Doesn't really matter. Let's sit down for a moment. Top up the flasks, spend a few of the runes we've collected on a couple of levels, and just sit for a moment. There's no rush. Do you know what? I've been talking non-stop for the best part of an hour now, and I should probably drink some water. Let me just... one moment. There, that's better. If you've got a glass of water by the bed, this would be a nice time to have a sip, wouldn't it? Just a small one. Not enough to wake you up, but enough to keep you feeling well. My old singing teacher used to say that most tiredness is just dehydration in disguise. I don't know if that's really true. I think a lot of tiredness is just tiredness, but there's something in it, isn't there? Anyway, all right. Let me just sit at this grace for another moment, actually. Sometimes it's nice to just let the game breathe. My character's sitting cross-legged in the golden light, and the little tinkling music is playing, and the walls of the chamber are cool grey stone, and there's a bit of ivy coming through the ceiling somewhere behind us, and everything is very quiet. If I sit here long enough, in real life, my controller will actually go to sleep and the screen will dim slightly. Which is fine, we're not in any hurry. I've been lighting a lot of candles lately, actually, in the evenings. Just cheap ones, from the supermarket, nothing fancy. But there's something about a bit of candlelight in a room that makes it much cozier, doesn't it? It's a very ancient sort of light, warmer than a lamp, quieter than a screen, and it flickers just enough to give the room a bit of soft movement. I've got one on the table in front of me at the moment, actually, a little tea light in a small glass jar. It'll probably burn itself out sometime in the next hour, and I'll just leave it, and it'll be a nice sort of small event in the evening when the flame gives its last little flicker and goes. If you've got a candle nearby yourself, that's a nice thing to have going while you're falling asleep. Just make sure you blow it out before you drop off, of course. Fire is fine when it's contained. Anyway, just up here, at the end of this next corridor, we're going to meet Nephili Lux for the first time. Nephili is a warrior, very tall, very calm, very sensibly dressed. And she's a tarnished like us, which is to say, she's one of the wandering exiles who's come back to the lands between to try and become Elden Lord. She's on the same quest, essentially. And on a couple of the big bosses in the game, she'll leave a summon sign outside the boss room, so we can call her in to help us. She's a very capable fighter. She uses war cries and heavy weapons, and she takes a lot of hits. And she makes the Godrick fight considerably more manageable. If we're smart, we'll bring her in. There she is, standing just inside the doorway. She'll say something quietly to us, something about the road being long, and she'll leave her sign on the ground just outside the fog wall. Let's have a read of her message. That's her sign, glowing faintly on the stone. We can pick it up and summon her in just before we walk into the fight. Very kind of her, really. I always feel a bit better going into a boss with a friend, even a virtual one. I don't quite know why. You're not really doing less damage. You and the boss are just as tough as ever, and the boss's health scales up a bit when there's more than one of you. But there's something psychologically comforting about having someone else in the room. It's the same reason we don't like doing paperwork alone, isn't it? Just having someone else there, quietly getting on with their own bit, makes the whole thing feel more bearable. Anyway, all right. Fog walls just up here. Big shimmering white door in the arch. Once we walk through, we're committed. No leaving until the fight's done one way or another. And on the other side is Godrick the Grafted, sitting on his throne, waiting for us. So let's just take a moment before we go in. I always like this little threshold moment in a Souls game. There's a particular sound the fog walls make, this sort of low, hushed, breathy sound, and if you stand right in front of one, you can hear it very clearly. And you know that just on the other side of that wall, there's someone very unpleasant waiting for you, and you've done all the preparation you can. You've got your weapon upgraded, you've got your flasks topped up, you've leveled up as far as you can afford, you've picked the right talismans, and now it's just about walking through the door and seeing what happens. There's a lovely bit of nervous anticipation in it. In real life, I don't get many moments like that anymore. I'm not often about to face something dangerous. But in a video game, you can have that feeling on tap. It's actually quite therapeutic, I think, to have a controlled little dose of nervousness once in a while. I'm going to summon Nephili. Sign is glowing at my feet. There we go. She pops in behind me in a little flash of white light. Very good. All right. Let's go and meet Godrick. through the fog. And here he is. He's a sight, isn't he? He's a very large, hunched, mostly human figure sitting on a stone throne. And he's got a great many arms grafted onto his back. There's a wheel of arms is the best way I can describe it. All different sizes, all clutching different weapons, all sort of writhing around behind him. It's a lot to take in. He's meant to be an unsettling design, and I think he does the job. He gets up off his throne and he gives us a bit of a speech. He calls himself the Golden Lineage, because he's a descendant of Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and he tells us that the strong will one day inherit everything. It's very grand. But we've heard it all before, haven't we? And we're not really here for the speech. We're here to have a slow, calm fight and then a lie down. He picks up a huge axe. It's easily as tall as he is, and it's got a great heavy curved head that could cave in a wall. And he starts swinging it. Big overhead swings mostly. Slow, very readable if you're paying attention. We'll roll to the side of the swing and get in 1 or 2 hits, and then roll away again. And Nephilim will be behind him, taking his attention off us most of the time, which gives us plenty of openings. There, a swing, roll to the left, in for a hit, and back out. He's turning to Nephilim now. She's shouting one of her war cries, which sort of freezes him for a moment. That's a good opening. In for another hit, and out. I'm being very deliberate about the timing here, on purpose. If I got greedy, went in for a 3rd or 4th hit, he'd turn round and swat me with the back of the axe, and I'd be in a spot of bother. So we're going in 2s, 2 hits, then back out. 2 more, then back out. It's a nice rhythm actually, the kind of thing you can sort of get into a flow with. Some players call this game like a dance, and I do see what they mean. It's a very slow, very deliberate dance, and you're leading it, and if you get the steps right, nothing bad happens. And if you get the steps wrong, well, you sit at the grace and come back and try again. There's really no permanent consequence. That's one of the things I appreciate most about this game, actually. You always get another go. You know, one thing I've always liked about this fight is that it feels like an actual fight. Some of the bosses later on in the game are so fast that it's really more of a rhythm game than a combat encounter. You're just memorizing a dance. But Godrick in this first phase moves at about the speed of a real person, and it feels a bit more like a proper wrestle. We're not that much slower than he is. We can get out of the way of his big swings just by walking. It's a gentle sort of fight. A first boss sort of fight. Alright, we're about halfway through his health. Any second now he's going to do the thing. And there, yes, he's grabbing a dragon head off the wall, and he's grafting it onto the stump where his own hand used to be. That's the transition into phase 2. Now he's going to be able to breathe fire. Big sweeping streams of flame across the arena, which sounds alarming, but as long as we stay behind him, or off to the side, we're fine. The flame comes out in a big fan in front of him, not in a circle, so we just move around behind him. Nephilim is being tremendously useful here. She's holding his attention beautifully. I'll just, get in behind him, and get in 3 or 4 hits while he's busy with her, and roll away, and back in. He's starting to look a little bit ragged now, and so am I, if I'm honest. I'm down to maybe half my flasks. Let me just take one for the health. Slow gulp. Very good. Right, back into it. You know, I was reading somewhere recently that the composers who did the music for this game specifically wrote the boss themes to feel like a big church piece. Big choirs, big pipe organ-y sort of arrangements, that kind of thing. And I think you can hear it in this one. There's a great long line of choir sitting underneath everything, and every so often the drums come in for a bit, and then the choir comes back. It's got the same shape as an old hymn, really. I always find it strangely relaxing to fight bosses in this game because of that. The music is so full and so slow that even in the middle of a very tense fight, there's this sort of soothing feeling underneath it all. You're not being chased by a drum roll or a fast panicky violin. You're being sung at by a big slow choir. It's a very kind way to fight a boss, actually. Here comes another dragon breath. Get behind him. 2 hits. Roll away, and he's staggered. That's the whole health bar down to a critical hit opening. Now, if I run over and press the button just right, I can do a big spectacular finishing move on him. Let's see. There. Press. And yes, there it is. My character leaps up, jams the sword right down into him and pulls it out again, and Godrick sort of collapses, sinks to his knees, and has a moment. He's not quite dead yet. He's saying something, in a very sad, defeated sort of way, about the ancient tree that used to give life to his line, and about how he wishes he could grow strong again. It's actually one of the sadder death monologues in the game. He was a grand and terrible boss a moment ago, and now he's just a broken thing, whispering apologies to a tree. There's something to think about there, isn't there? But we don't need to dwell on it right now. And that's it. He fades away, in a little puff of golden light, and the fog wall behind us dissolves, and the music stops, and we're standing in a suddenly very quiet throne room. Nephili walks off to one side and stands looking out the window, which is very in character for her. She's not one for celebration. Well done, us. That's Godrick down, our first big boss. On the floor where Godrick was standing, there's a little glimmer. That's his rune drop, a whole lot of runes for us to spend on levels. And there's also his remembrance. A remembrance is a special item you get from every major boss in the game. You can either take it to the round table hold and trade it in for a special weapon that's themed after that boss, or you can consume it for a lot of extra runes. It's one of the choices you make. We'll pop it in the bag for now and decide later, no rush. And, most importantly, after a moment, there'll be another glowing item that appears in the middle of the throne room. That's Godrick's Great Rune. Great Runes are the big trophies of the game. There are 6 of them, one for each of the big shard-bearer bosses, and collecting them all is basically what the plot is about. Godrick's is the first, and it gives you a boost to all your stats when it's active. To make it active, we'll need to take it to the top of a divine tower, up on the eastern edge of Limgrave, which is a whole little adventure we'll do in a later episode. For now, we've got it in the bag, and that's plenty for tonight. Let's also pick up the golden Sight of Grace that's just appeared in front of the throne. It's called the Godrick the Grafted Grace, appropriately enough. If we sit down at it, we can rest and... Oh, look, Melina appears. That's lovely. It's actually the game's way of letting us know we've reached a milestone. She's here to say a few words about our progress. She'll tell us that a shard has been claimed, and she'll offer us something small. I think this is the one where she gives us the ability to summon her at will, actually. Very nice. We'll thank her and sit for a moment. The music that plays after you beat a big boss and sit at their grace is very lovely. It's a soft, contemplative sort of piece. Piano, mostly, with a bit of choir. It's the game rewarding you for the hour or so of concentration you just put in, by playing you a nice quiet lullaby. Which is a good sign for us tonight, isn't it? We can just sit at this grace for a bit and let the music play. Right, through the doorway on the far side of the throne, if we like, there's a lift. Or is it stairs? I think it's a lift. It goes up to the very top of Stormveil, and from up there you can see out over the whole of Limgrave to the north, right up toward Liurnia of the Lakes, which is the next big region we'll be visiting. It's one of the most memorable views in the game, actually. You get to the top of the lift, you walk out onto a rooftop, and you look out, and the fog parts, and there in the distance is this vast lake, sort of glittering in the misty light, with a great Gothic castle in the far background, and a giant statue up on a cliff, and it's a beautiful moment. The whole design of the game leans on these views. You've done a hard bit, and as a reward, the game shows you the next bit of the map, and it looks so lovely that you can't help but want to walk toward it. But we'll leave the lift for our next episode. That's the perfect thing to walk out to at the start of a fresh sit-down. So for now, we'll settle back at the throne grace, and we'll wrap up here for the night. Actually, before we finish up, let me just sit for another moment or two. I'm reluctant to leave this grace, if I'm honest. Some of them are just They're just nice places to be. This throne room has this very high, vaulted ceiling, and the light is coming down through the windows in these long, thin beams, and dust is drifting in them, and Nephili is still standing by the window doing her contemplative thing, and there's a great heavy silence over everything. Very peaceful. If you fell asleep in a room like this, you'd wake up rested, I'm sure of it. You know, I've been thinking about this while we've been sitting here. One of the things I love about this game is that even the biggest and grandest rooms are a bit lonely. Even the throne room of a king. There's no court, no advisors, no servants, just the king and his monsters, and now that we've dealt with him, there's just us. A dropped axe, a scattering of runes, a woman by the window who doesn't say much, and me. It should feel triumphant, a moment like this, but it feels more melancholy than anything. That's very characteristic of these games, actually. The victories aren't ever really celebratory, they're just quiet. And there's something in that I actually find quite comforting. It suggests that everything ends softly. Even the big, loud, dramatic moments end quietly, in a hush, with a bit of dust drifting in the sunlight. All the fuss dies down, everything settles. All right, I'm getting a bit philosophical. That happens when you sit at a grace too long. Let me try and pull it back to the game. So, let's have a very gentle look back at what we did tonight. And if you drifted off some time ago, don't worry about this bit at all. It's just for the few of you who managed to stay awake till the end. We started at the site of grace outside the front gate of Stormveil Castle. We chose the sneaky path along the ravine, and we picked up some rainbow stones and a smithing stone or two on the way in. We slipped past a couple of guards, made our way into the first courtyard, picked up the Stormhawk axe and gave the Stormhawks themselves a very wide berth. We visited the little golden sapling in the middle of the courtyard and collected the golden seed, and we grabbed the Hookclaws from a corpse under the tree. We worked our way up onto the ramparts, found the Erdtree's favor talisman in a chest, a lovely all-round talisman we'll probably wear for a good while, and then dropped down into the lower halls. We fought the Grafted Scion in his cell and picked up the axe of Godrick. We took the raw medallion from the balcony, we backstabbed a banished knight and grabbed a nice ash of war. We crossed the bridge, met Nephili Lukes, and summoned her in for the fight. And then we did the fight itself, nice and steady, no drama, and Godrick the Grafted went down without too much fuss. We picked up his great rune, we picked up his remembrance, and we sat at the new grace and had a lovely chat with Melina, and then we called it a night. That's a very productive session, actually, for a first episode. I'm rather pleased. Next time, on episode 2, we'll pick up right where we left off. We'll take the lift to the top of Stormveil and have that lovely view of Liurnia, and then we'll head down into the mist-covered lake and start exploring the next region. There'll be new landmarks, new little churches to visit, new little bits of gear to pick up, and we might, if we're feeling brave, take a look at the road up to Raya Lucaria Academy, which is where the sorcerers all live. There'll be no rush. There'll be plenty of tangents. It'll be a very slow, very gentle continuation. I hope you'll join me for it. Now, a few thank yous in the softest possible voice. If you're still awake, thank you for staying with me. If you've drifted off, well, then you're not hearing this, but thank you anyway. If this is the first episode of Sleepy Informer you've listened to, thank you very much for giving it a try, and I hope it worked for you. If you'd like to hear more and you're listening on YouTube, there's a little button below the video with a bell on it. I don't need to tell you how it works. And if you tap it, it'll let you know when the next episode goes up. And if you're listening somewhere else, an app, a podcast player, a playlist someone made for you, the same idea applies, whatever the equivalent is in your particular corner of the internet. One last soft note before I let you go. If tonight was your first time trying to fall asleep to a video I've made, and it worked, please do come back. And if it didn't quite work, if you're still awake and a bit annoyed about it, please give it another try another night. Sleep is one of those funny things where the more you try to force it, the more it runs away from you. Sometimes I put on a video like this, and I'm asleep within 10 minutes. Sometimes I put one on, and I'm still wide awake at the end of it. There's no telling, really. Just try again another evening. I'll be here. And if you enjoyed a specific thing about tonight, a particular tangent, or a particular bit of the game, or the pace of it, do let me know. I'm always interested to hear which bits worked for people and which bits didn't. Not that you need to write a whole essay about it. Just a word or two is plenty. Every little bit helps me get better at doing this. It's an odd art, sleep content. You can't really tell whether you've done a good job unless someone tells you. Alright, that's really it. Time to say goodnight. Wherever you are, I hope you're warm, and I hope you're comfortable, and I hope your pillow is just the right amount of squished. I hope you've got that one particular corner of the sheet that you like. I hope your feet aren't cold. If you were falling asleep on the sofa and you meant to go up to bed hours ago, I hope you've got the energy to actually get there. And if you're already in bed, I hope you can just sink a little further down into it now. I'll leave the game to fade out for a few minutes on its own. There's no more talking from me tonight. Just the sound of the wind through the castle, and the very faint music of the Grace, and Melina sitting quietly on the stones. Sleep well, sleep deeply. I'll see you in the next one. Good night.